A warm welcome from my side. I'm very happy to talk with my panelists and with you about one of the really hot topics. We all know we need a Mobilitätswende, I say mobility revolution. Yeah? We have EV cars, we do a lot. But the real thing is, do we need so many cars as we have now, or do we have more intelligent solutions in the future? And I brought 6 slides just to wake you up, kind of mind opener, we haven't seen them, just to tackle the discussion. So the question is car ownership of the future. And this picture is a German picture, and it shows where we come from. The pride of the family in our own house, and in front we have our car. So it belongs, it's one system. But today, if you look about seat utilization, we know this from airplanes. And you can read the numbers. We counted 1.5 occupation per car as an average. Others say maybe 1.2, so it's very conservative. We have an hour a day we use our cars. If you divide it by the potential, it's 1.1%. So it's a big waste of resources standing around, 89.9%. This with airplanes, hotels, would be devastating. Second number, just again, German market. We have 1.01 cars per license. So we just counted the people who have a car license who are able to drive. Some of them may be too old, so the figure may be even higher. So we have enough motor cars, maybe more than enough. And the third one I like, how much energy, weight, material do we need to move our bodies at an average weight of 85, I'm slightly above. Even we count the gasoline, and you see it's 1,200 kilograms per person. And you know the tendency with SUVs. They nearly account half of the whole market in Germany. So this number is even higher. We can do this with airplanes, with trains, whatever. But I think it's just interesting. How much material do we need, again, to move us from A to B? And I had the honor to be guest at the NEO presentation in Berlin. And William Lee, the founder, showed this chart to a big crowd in the Berlin Tempodrome. And he said, we redefine how to own a car. He was very excited. He said, flexibility is the new premium. And you could like rent all these new things, you couldn't buy the car. And I was witnessing live that all the dealers came, and by midnight, the same day, there was a task force who had to decide, yes, you can buy, rent, or lease a car, because nobody wanted it. This was just in Germany. So maybe that's the future, but this was just dead end and did not work. And the last chart is like, it's a starter from Zurich, Switzerland, Judith and Robert. And I like very much the slogan, which they say, vom Besitz means ownership, Zugang means access. Yeah? And with this, I would like to kick off our panel and ask you very quickly, I will ask you a question. You introduce yourself quickly, what you do. And we're going to have one round of questions. And then please do ask questions. We have a micro, and I'm just kicking it off, and I would really like to include you. So I would start with James. James is from CarWow. You are the founder. Mm-hmm. You still have you are the CEO, so you made changes. So how did CarWow evolve from being a homemade blog, as I learned it, to such a big online platform?
Sure. So CarWow evolved over a very long period of time. So I set it up 14 years ago as a blog in my parents' house.
Okay.
Now,
in the garage?
The attic, nearly. So now CarWow is Europe's largest marketplace for buying or selling cars, and now the world's most influential car media business. Our YouTube channel is quite famous, the world's biggest, 1 billion views last year.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for my clicker. And what is one thing you achieved by today where you're especially proud of? Which was the one thing, there's a lot of same business in Germany all over. But why is CarWow so successful, and why do so many people know the brand?
I think CarWow has been successful today because we focused on what the customer wants.
Okay.
Now, sometimes that got us into trouble with the car industry. It wasn't always what they wanted. But by focusing on what the customer wants, we managed to massage and change the car industry and have played our part in evolving to ultimately offering everyone a much better customer experience. But focusing on the consumer while partnering with the best in the world on supply side has made us successful.
Give us one example the car supplier didn't like.
Many examples. One example is CarWow in the early days was largely about comparison of price. So if you wanted to buy, say, BMW, you could compare different BMW dealers' prices. That world is close to dead now. The difference in prices, the agency model, direct-to-consumer, it's gone. Still, people are using CarWow to choose where to buy their car and how to buy it.
Thanks. We move to Northern Europe. Hans Christian, why is Norway such a good market to start a subscription company? We all know you are the EV country, 20%. What is it? What makes it so different?
I think, so first about Cassie, so we're a mobility company, delivering car subscription as a service, so helping providers like OEMs, importers, dealers, rentals, leasing companies to launch and scale car subscription. And I think if you go a couple of years back, Norway was a pretty anonymous country in the automotive business. But now it's at least on the map because of the EV adoption. 9 out of 10 new cars being sold are fully electric. In Bergen, where I live, 30% of the total car fleet is fully electric. So I think that has given us at least a possibility to look into the future, what happens when you have EV adoption like that. And I think EV adoption is a trigger for a lot of the new business models. Often when you introduce the EVs, you also introduce subscription, or it could be a car share, different mobility services. And then final thing is maybe Norway is quite expensive with clearly limited volumes. So if you make a business model work there, then you have a good chance of making it work anywhere else.
Sounds right, but what is it? Why is EV opening up the market? Is it less brand loyalty, or what is it?
I think it changes a lot of things. You see the consumer behavior becomes very different.
How?
It's you look at cars more like electronics. You see the pace of technology changing so quickly. You're not that brand focused. So we have like the best sellers in Norway. I think are brands that you wouldn't imagine buying like a couple of years ago. And then you have this in combination with a pretty high degree of digitization. Norway is also the highest on use of new mobility services like bikes and electric scooters. So maybe like an open kind of people to try out new things. But I think what we did a Series A capital raise in 2021, and I remember one of the investors said that, Norway, that's cute. What about where people live? and they do have a point, right? So we have spent a lot of time launching now into the different countries in Europe.
But that's interesting for the other OEMs about this brand loyalty. So if Norway is on the forefront, we will have some severe changes. We mentioned Norway, looking at other countries. You just operate in Norway, or?
No, so now we're in the Nordics, Baltics, Germany, Netherlands, UK, and Spain.
What about Netherlands? Germany, sorry. How different is it, or how do you succeed in entering this market?
We see a lot of geographical differences. I think one of the biggest differences between the Nordics that we were used to and Germany is that car subscription has much longer commitment times. And also the price level is different. So where you maybe have like an average of 700 euros maybe per month per car in the Nordics, it's more close to 400 or 500 in Germany and Spain. So that's one big difference. Netherlands, it's a country very used to leasing, like seeing a monthly price on subscription. So the biggest difficulty there they're very price oriented. So then when you start sort of adding flexibility,
even more than the Germans?
Yeah, at least that's our experience.
Okay.
So so you have to adapt to the local market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traveling from Norway to Spain, Sebastian. How does Astara, or maybe one word to Astara, you're the first time here at the Munich Fair, as I know. So maybe 2 words about Astara. And what kind of alternative forms of car ownership you do as a global player, as I know?
Okay. First thing I have to talk to you is I have brought from Spain the sun, okay, and I will, keep on these sunny days.
Yeah, wherever we say it's a white, blue sky.
That's right. So. Thank you. So thank you very much. So Astara, it's a mobility company. We have a big, department, people in charge of research and UX, which is very important. We are looking and researching what the people want in terms of mobility.
Yeah.
So as we have digitalized the company, fully, the most important thing is to offer different kind of products and channels to different people. We use 3 main topics. The first one is convenience. We're talking about flexibility, but we used to talk about convenience. The second one is cost. The third one is environment. So having said so, we are working deeply, of course, in ownership. That it's one of our main business in 19 countries with more than 26 brands. 19, okay. Right? But the second thing is hearing from the people about this, flexibility, sharing and subscription. It's very important. Okay. So we have some channels, we have companies in charge of that. We are talking about sharing not only one way, but round trip with electric vehicles, of course, and hybrid vehicles, but with technology inside to know data, connectivity, which is very important.
All about data.
And of course, the subscription should be in a convenience way. We are using a way of 1 month of commitment. So this is very important. Short term. But the key point is we are converting this loyalty in between 6 and 12 months. Okay. So we are kind of a flexible leasing. Yeah. So this is very important. And the second thing that I mentioned to you is the cost. To analyze carefully the rate that the people who is in charge of this kind of products could pay in a monthly basis.
Perfect. So 19 countries. Which is the country you learn most? Where are most advanced if you talk about this flexibility?
We're learning about all the countries because we are in
Spain?
several continents. No, it's different. Every country, okay, the patterns in Europe are similar. Yeah. United States and Europe, we are facing that 1 out of 4 new vehicles will be sold in a subscriptional model.
1 out of 4. Right,
25%. So, but in Latin America, it's not the same pattern, okay? It's not the same market, it's not the same conditions. So we are learning a lot, but what we are learning is we have to focus very careful about the product to put on the market in the subscriptional basis. Because the rates are different in each country. Okay. And you have to go up to this maximum, because if not, it's out of this position.
Yeah. We come back to that later. Last but not least, Ben. How does enterprise tackle the challenges in the car rental industry? We have Europe Car 6, Germany. What's the situation right now? We had this fast after Corona. We really earned a lot, and we couldn't deliver cars. So does it normalize, or where's the enterprise rental industry right now?
Well, I think that's a really great question, but the rental industry has always had many, many challenges. COVID was just yet another iteration of those. But for me, when you talk about our competition, it isn't just the rental companies that you mentioned. It's everybody involved in mobility. Okay. So your points earlier were fantastic in terms of people are looking for flexibility. But actually now we're seeing people place more and more value on that flexibility. And for a company like ourselves, we operate close to 2 million assets globally. People from us can get assets by the minute, by the hour, by the day, week, month, or even year. So we're really intrigued by that extra value that can be brought by flexibility. But of course, I think a couple of the early comments that we just heard on convenience here are absolutely key as well. Flexibility doesn't work on its own if it's not convenient and accessible. Also, what we need to do to be able to provide the right environment for this to really flourish is to look at the interoperability of these modes of transport as well. So you may get a vision in the future where your mobility isn't about a 12-month subscription. It may be a subscription where you have a certain number of days a year of different types of hire vehicles, or even a certain number of hours a day, and that will give you accessibility into all the different modes of transport that truly make up a more flexible option that is more convenient than ownership, or at least gets to compete with ownership to a certain degree.
You mentioned 3 times the word convenience. Give us one example. It might be very simple, but what's one of the main triggers of convenience in your business?
So for us, convenience is about allowing people to access that form of mobility in whichever format is right for them. So many of our customers are experienced business people flying in and out of airports who don't really need to be helped along the way. They just want to get in the car and go. We have a lot of tech-savvy customers that want to get into car share or car rental type modes that just want to access it by the phone. We also have a lot of other customers that aren't used to these types of scenarios, want to have a conversation to be helped through that process to a greater degree. So convenience is different to each type of individual.
Okay.
But linked to that is also that interoperability that I mentioned, because if we're going to find convenience in moving between perhaps getting out of your car and hopping onto an electric bike for the last mile, or accessing public transport via a scooter, convenience in knowing about those types of options is key. And that's where I think things like mobility as a service play a really interesting part in this conversation.
I stick with one more question. How would you say with the, let's say, the next generation, let's say beyond 35, how do they define convenience?
Again, a really interesting concept. And I was having a discussion with my son this weekend. My son's 12 years old.
12.
12, yeah.
11.
And he found my old record collection, and he couldn't comprehend what these things were.
Yeah.
And I said, this is, I buy music. And he had no idea what buying music meant. In his world, if he wants to listen to a song, he simply asks Alexa to play that song. The concept of ownership is very, very different for him. So I think the convenience is about having the right thing at the right time and in the right way. And that younger generation don't feel like they need to own it in the same way that old folks like me do, where we feel like we have to hold it and own it and call it our own.
That's the right word for the next round from my side. In Shanghai and Singapore, the number of cars is limited, gedeckelt in German. So if you buy a car, there's an auction, and it may be that the auction price is double the price of the car. And then you still have to pay for a garage. So that's for Singapore and Shanghai happening now. So car ownership has reached its limits. If you look at it in your countries, how is you tackled? If I do keynotes with Germans and I say always it's zero traffic jams, 0 emissions, 0 accidents, and 0 ownership, with ownership it gets very nervous. So how is it in your countries? The relationship to ownership. Maybe we start with you and go.
So, and we operate in every country around the globe, and it is a little bit different in each country. But there is definitely a protectionism over this idea that you can't prevent somebody from going down this ownership path, which I think is right. I think it's hard to put in governance that prevents that type of thing. And over many, many years, we've seen increased costs put onto car ownership through various different taxation forms, and it's never deterred people from owning the car. So the key is to provide alternatives that offer better value, and that value is the key. How can we give somebody the ability to use just the right car at the right time for the right hours that they need it? If I go out and buy a car, I'm typically buying the largest car that I need for that one trip a year. if I think about the right mode at the right time, well, maybe I only need a small car. If there's only 1.5 people in that car, I only need a small car to move a couple of miles into a congestion zone that means it has to be electric. If I'm taking my family on a ski trip, I probably need that large 4x4, but only for the day. So I think sharing and the sharing market has a huge amount to offer here. But it's about providing value that attracts our customers along the journey, not about preventing people from having the ownership model, which I think is where you get into that tricky conversation.
What about ownership in where you come from?
I have a very different view. So I think the vast majority of people in the UK and Germany and Spain, they use their car to go to work or to drop their children at school, generally 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Everyone needs a car then. Nothing is more convenient than having a car sitting right in front of your house. You know, you can use it any time. It's got all your stuff in it, all your rubbish in it.
Yep.
It's there. That's the most convenient. In major cities, like Shanghai, London, maybe Munich as well, sure, some people, they don't need to own a car, but they never owned a car. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they didn't own a car. They had public transport, they had taxis, they have Uber. So I don't think the concept of ownership in that way. Now, maybe they don't own it, maybe they lease it, but it's their car still.
Yeah.
They have complete access, they have control.
Yeah.
Our view is subscription, leasing, in not challenging car ownership at all at the moment.
I think I agree with some of the points. I remember in the old days when I had to buy a car, then I was also thinking the same way, right? What will be the most challenging thing I will do for the next 3 years? Towing a boat or going, and I ended up with a big SUV every time. So I think it's good. We see that our customer use the flexibility to have like a small practical car or whatever that sort of fits their need day to day. And then like this summer when I was actually towing a car, I got a pickup truck, right? And but I wouldn't want to drive a pickup truck the rest of the year. I think what is interesting for our point of view is that when we work with the OEMs, like in Norway, it hasn't been private leasing, hasn't been a lot because the residual value on electric cars has been very uncertain. And then the leasing becomes very expensive, so it's easier to buy the car. And but then you see certain OEM just sort of deciding this car is only available on subscription. This car is so. I don't think the users, of course, matter, but the OEMs also have a major influence in how a country has access to their cars.
They have to market.
And that's interesting when they not go through the importer and the dealership anymore, but go directly to the end user. I think we'll see much more things on the how the OEM wants it to be, right? And that's interesting.
What about your home country, Spain?
Yeah, we are focusing on cities, of course.
Cities, yeah.
Dealing with this problem. We hope that the product, the OEMs are gonna produce, much more cars even, but they are gonna launch in different channels. We're now in the world of B2B directly in retailers. Now we are looking at B2B2C in several channels like sharing or like subscription.
Okay.
And every car has its own target. And
explain to us B2B2C, just for the audience, what does it mean?
Okay, we think that this will be the way as the OEMs and distributors like us want to position it in the world, because we want to know and to connect with the final client. It's not a question to sell the asset, it's a question to, if I may, to sell miles.
Yeah.
So that's the key point that we are going to do. In fact, for example, now we are looking at models for electric vehicles in subscription for integrating the infrastructure and even the energy.
Okay.
And perhaps in the future you will pay not the vehicle, not the infrastructure, but the energy including the vehicle. Okay? This is a pure subscription model. So what we're facing is these different channels inside the cities, and what it's very important to know, it's the mobility as a service products inside the city should integrate not only private but public transportation to know how to go from A to B in time and cost.
Yeah. In Germany, we say to mobility as a service, it's auf Knopfdruck. You just push the button, and it's magic.
Yeah,
you got something to add?
Yeah, I think just to make the point that what a lot of people are saying here, I think it works in unison. I don't disagree with James in terms of that ownership is a model that dominates and will dominate for some time. That's why I think this is very much an evolutionary process, not the revolutionary process. And part of the reason for that is, if you take the music analogy that I used earlier, that was driven because technology was ahead and bringing the customer journey along with them. Today, this is a little bit different. It's policymakers are trying to encourage us to go down or enforce us to go down this journey in urban areas faster than perhaps the technology is ready for. So that's where that convenience isn't quite where it needs to be yet. But what we do see is we see people going from 2-car families down to 1-car families, or people who live in very urban areas with real access to all these different modes, like in a London, like in a Shanghai, are operating slightly differently. But it's definitely evolution. There's no thought in my mind that ownership is a model that has a short time frame left. Definitely not.
Okay. We do a short break. I'm working part-time academia, and I had this idea this morning to include you. So I did a survey, a poll on LinkedIn. It's like my business partner, my platform. And if you have fun, and maybe afterwards, I'm the guy, Kleebinder, go to LinkedIn and vote. And we have this question, is it buying, renting, leasing, sharing, subscribing? We're going to write an article and publicize your results. Okay. So I'm waiting for the first question. Please, come on. Anybody, please, in the back. Please say your name and what you do so we can have a good... Wait, where do we have the micro? Sorry, here.
Hi, I'm Arun. I work at an OEM called Auto-Messe in Farina. I just wanted to understand one thing from the panel. Where does used cars actually fit in your perimeter of the world?
Please.
I can take a go at that. So at least for car subscription, our fleet is mixed between new cars and used cars. And what you see on the used cars is that at least the value depreciation of a car is highest in the first year. So when you're moving into the second, the third, the fourth year, the costs of having the car, you're still within the guarantee. There's not much wrong with the car. Then the subscriptions can become very attractive priced. So what you see is if you typically have low-price car, medium-price car, and a high-end car, you can sort of jump segment, right? So you have a medium car, but you're low-priced. Okay. So a huge part of the fleet is used cars, especially leasing companies with their release or remarketing. So they're first out on a leasing, and then they swap business model, and then put them on a subscription.
Sebastian?
We are looking in the subscriptional model 2, 3, 4, 5 cycles of this car from new to used car. But the key point is we are finding through data the tipping point to sell the car in a proper way, in a proper time and proper kilometers or miles. So this is one advantage because we're using and we are having profit from this car in the subscription model. And then when we see that is the good point to sell in the market in a part of advantage, we do it. So this is the way.
Sorry, just a follow-up question on that. So you do see that these cars that are actually finishing their life cycle at subscription get sold to a customer, or is it actually going to a landfill? How do you manage selling it to customers after?
I'll make a quick comment on that. But, well, we operate, as I say, close to 2 million vehicles globally. And we sell each and every one of those to a customer at the end of its life with us. And we do see I think particularly with these more expensive assets in electric vehicles, that their lifespan is going to be a little bit different from an ICE vehicle. Perhaps that second life will still be a hugely valuable asset, but will just go into a slightly different piece. And we're seeing, I think, with a lot of vehicle manufacturers, that their lease cars, they don't want to go to the open market at the end of 12 months because the financials don't make sense. So it might go into a subscription model, it might go into a rental model, it might go into all sorts of different things. But our customers understand that a year-old electric car is still a new electric car. It's a little bit different from the views that people used to have of that petrol or diesel.
I can add a thing. What at least we have tried to do in CASI is that there's a lot of data, right, that you can use in order to decide what to do with a car. So we have telematics in the car giving us real-time mileage. We connect to marketplaces, so we know the approximate price of a car. And then we also connect to the credit facility, so we know how much capital you have in the car. So using those data, we categorize the cars in green, yellow, red. So green is then everything is okay, you can keep it on the subscription, the margins are good. Yellow, you need to do something, right? Maybe adjust prices, could be the kilometers that go crazy, so you should look at that. But then the final one is maybe the most interesting, the red, and that's the sale recommendation. So it's comparing the business case of selling the car out in the market and keeping it on subscription. And for example, last year when the used car prices were skyrocket, I think we had a sales recommendation on 65% of our cars. So it would be better to sell them than keep them on subscription. And it's like, okay, you know that the timing for subscription is bad when the data look like that. But now it's completely turned around, right, with the used car prices going down. So it could also, and that could also be used to decide not necessarily sell the car, but also, okay, the car is now, it comes from the factory. It's, you have very high value depreciation. The computer recommends you to put it on car sharing, and then it can tell you, okay, but the next model should be subscription, and then maybe like a carpool, sell it, used car, different, or between short-term rental, long-term rental.
For us, we very much listen to what our customers want. So if our customers are happy with a vehicle that is older in a different type of market, then great. That's what we will provide and that's what we'll operate. Certain vehicles are far better at that shared marketplace than others. I think and it's very different if we start switching from passenger vehicles to commercial vehicles, which at the end of that lifespan typically have worked much, much harder and are less likely to go into these other models.
Okay. I'd like to raise our topic to a higher level. If you look at the Green Deal, we have goals to achieve also in the transport sector. And there's this word with public-private partnerships. And like you know all about London, regulation, a city toll. And like in France, get my research, the government funds like carpooling. So if you take somebody with you, you get money for it. In Germany, we just give a lot of money to buying and owning a car. Yeah? And so what about government influence? Are there any of those incentives? And do we need them? You know, access to cities, downtown with cars. Will this change this landscape? Or is it still up in the future? Whoever, yeah. Sebastian.
I think this will change the future because we were talking before. In town halls, the solution or the final solution to integrate the mobility is to have technology to everybody be included in. So it's not a mobility as a service, we call transportation as a system. So if you want to be in a city with a e-scooter company or subscription company or sharing company, you could have an API to be included in this technology. So the user could, choose in between A to B to several and different options. This is the first one. So within this technology, the town hall could regulate, the low emission zones in the city and could have alternatives to move inside. If not, there are lots of facets, lots of APP. It's impossible to understand several times, and the people is not, very skilled how to move in a cost and an effective way in the city.
Okay, transportation as a service, I learned.
That's it.
Other words.
We've seen the huge effect of, so in Germany, the German government stimulated electric car sales by throwing money.
Yeah,
massive
a lot
impact,
of money.
Huge impact. You went from 10-15% of car sales being electric to 60-odd% on CarWow. So you see the huge stimulus it has. In Britain, the British government doesn't have any money, so there's no money thrown at electric cars at all. You have the London ultra-low emission zone, but it's not driving people to buy electric.
Okay.
It's people with very old used cars, and maybe they get a slightly different, less old used car, but it's not stimulating. I think if you want electric cars on the road, those kind of stimuluses at purchase, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. We work together like in Norway with Oslo, and you correct me, but I learned that they have decided to put up to 20,000 pods downtown, eliminate cars. So can you tell a little bit more about this?
Yeah.
It would be even one step further, but...
Yeah, and Norway is a good example where we've had great subsidiaries. There has been no VAT, for example, on electric cars. And as you said now, one of the issues of getting car sharing to work is to find parking spots. So they have opened up a lot of where you can only park with car sharing cars, and it's all over the city.
Okay.
So that's one way of the government helping the acceleration. So it's, but I think that what we see huge differences in the different countries. And for example, we recently launched a service in the UK, and then it was, at least the OEM classified the car subscription as a loan product, which means that the whole process, the financial verification, the credit check, the KYC processes, everything becomes very complex. And it's difficult. Some places it's classified as a rental product, and then you need licenses in order to operate that. So it is difficult. We also see, like, if you have registration fees every time you swap the owner on a car, that also makes it very difficult for having more flexible access to cars. So I think there's a lot of things the government can help to accelerate.
I definitely agree with that, and we see the taxation systems on mobility in every European country are different, and that has a huge impact. In fact, we provide lots of solutions that help take vehicles off the road, whether it be carpooling, car sharing, ride pooling, and in certain countries those are taxed as if you're in a company car. So it becomes prohibitive because our countries have archaic laws on car ownership or company cars that are not fit for purpose for mobility or for shared assets. So some of those things do need to change. There are some great examples in individual countries, but not a sort of set of examples that the European Union is saying, here's how we're going to promote mobility.
That's what we really would need.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience, please.
Hello together, my name is Christina. I wanted to ask if you see a kind of change by the e-mobilities or the e-cars depending on the car ownership, especially to the rest. And if yes, what can you point out?
Bastian?
You mean the difference in between the distribution, the channel, the characteristics of the EV in terms of the rest?
In B2C, so the car ownership for the customers.
Right. Yeah. We are looking at definitely that the solution for the EVs at this moment will be the subscription, because some uncertainties about the range, about the product, about the residual value sometimes. So we think that placing this kind of cars in a subscription model should be the solution for testing the car by the client, and then even to buy the car. So we are seeing this possibility, and we are launching this model, both, ownership and subscription. But we see that at this moment, subscription is very important for this, successful market.
You allow me to ask this question. We have a common secret passion. You know what? What are you going to plan to do with Microlino as the first really urban car talking about this sphere? If you can tell us.
Yeah, no, we're going to put in subscription in several markets. Okay. We are doing lots of campaigns related to this product, special product. Remember, Microlino, it's not a car, it's Microlino. So this is one important thing, because we are trying to differentiate the product itself, and we think that to promote that, subscription, it's the best part.
Okay. Maybe it's easier if you say it's not a car.
Yeah,
maybe.
it's not a car.
Any more questions from the audience? Please. First row.
Just following up on that Microlino topic, you say for Microlino the best channel is subscription, but what about sharing? I mean, like an urban use case, small car, perfect for a quick trip to like a 10-minute trip to get the car, do the shopping. Would the Microlino work there?
Yeah, you're right. But, this depends on the branding and the image that the promoters, the OEM, wants to focus on. So it's not easy. Because we have lots of examples of car-sharing cars, or car-sharing models that have been focusing on this business, and then to promote and to sell, in the open market is not so easy, because you have on the streets, you have tested a lot, and you say, okay, if I want to use it, I have. So if you, put this car inside the car-sharing, it should be not easy, to sell in an ownership or even in subscription. But having said so, fully agree with you that it's a perfect product to put in car sharing.
I think when we talk about those types of cars and what car share is trying to achieve. I think we need to be a little bit careful there. A lot of time when we're talking to policymakers, they don't really want you to use car share to compete with public transport. So if it truly is a journey that's only 10 minutes down the road, and public transport can operate that for you, then we should probably be looking at the right vehicle for the right journey. And maybe microtransit or public transit is the right thing for that. So I think where we put these assets and how they're used needs to be thought about in a way that's meeting those public benefit goals as well. Whether you're looking at these huge urban areas or whether you're looking at first last mile of people commuting in and out of them, just putting everybody in a smaller car doesn't really help that challenge.
We move into sharing. I think sharing could be our own topic, yeah? And we only have 3 minutes, just maybe 2 answers. What would make sharing work? What's the biggest obstacle? Maybe, or in one market where it works. I don't know about the figures in Scandinavia, but what makes sharing work? Because from a logical point of view, it's the one we should really aim.
Yeah. At least in the Nordic city, I think few of the car sharing concepts have been profitable because you lack volume. So they're sort of working, but it's not a profitable, scalable model. So I think sort of having access to enough people is important. What we have seen, we haven't done a lot of pilots, but we have it's possible to share your subscription car.
Okay.
And I think when you don't own the car, you have access to it, it's also easier to share it with others. It's not like you're giving away your car to someone else.
Yeah.
So that might be a trigger, a gateway into those models. But
I don't think we've seen car sharing work at scale anywhere. You came to Munich 5 years ago, everywhere was BMW, Mercedes, car sharing. The problem was Uber or taxi is the same price, and it's more convenient.
What about BlaBlaCar?
Yeah, but that's slightly different. That's more replacing long-distance train travel, and yeah, that works in France, but outside of France, I think it's struggled.
Okay. One last round. I think we know that we have to change our pattern of car ownership. You know, it's reached its limits, and we need more intelligent solutions. If you could decide for one driver, you know, will it be regulation? Will it be the offer by OEMs? Will it be your children? My point, it's my children who push this matter strongly. Will it be legal? What's the main driver which is really going to change the landscape? Just one driver, we start here and end here.
So I don't think it'll be regulation. I think it will be incentives, but everything in my life is decided by my children who push me to do absolutely everything. So I'm a big fan that the newer generations will demand it in that format.
Welcome. Please.
It'll be the price to the consumer.
Price, okay.
Subscription is far too expensive, and car sharing is inconvenient, so that won't make an impact, but the price has to come far, far down. We can't forget people pay for their house, and their second most expensive household purchase or finance is their car. It has to come down in price. Government regulation would help.
But maybe car ownership is still too cheap if you look at all the costs, but different.
Yeah.
I can say something else, just for the variation. So I think the technology in the cars being so connected, it's much easier to allow flexible access. So I think that will just continue to develop.
Sebastian.
I think it's a combination of all. Sorry for that. I think it's government, I think it's people, new generation, I think it's data, it's technology. Yeah. But I think that the OEMs has lots of work to do in terms of they will continue doing the best, and I think the product will be very, very important, and we will continue with the ownership also.
Perfect. Just in time. Guys, thank you for a great discussion. Thank you for your questions and answers. Don't forget to vote, and have a great day. Thank you.